Good evening once again, and welcome to the Monday Review Show. It is Monday. It's 8 o'clock here in Ireland and in the UK. Going out on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitter. If you'd like to make any comments, please do so. On the bottom right-hand part of the screen, there's a place there where you can make your comments, ask a question, whatever you wish. We'll be on the air for the next 30 minutes, so please do avail of the opportunity to make your comments. Wow, Keith, I suppose we have to start because the thing that's exercising most people and getting a lot of people really hot under the collar, which is the game yesterday between Manchester City and Tottenham Hotspur at the Emirates Stadium, and of course, particularly around the where Haaland was fouled, got up quickly, took the free kick, passed it forward. The referee decided eventually to blow up and give the free kick. And people are saying, what the hell's going on? Why didn't he allow advantage?
Well, first of all, I don't think it was a free kick. I think that what happened was Haaland was clearly fouled. And the ball rolled free to another player. And at that point, the referee, Simon Hooper, up to that point, Errol, had a really good game.
Yeah.
He kept out of it. The players just got on with it. And it was actually a very, very good game. But what he did was he applied advantage. He then signalled again. The ball broke to Grealish, the Manchester City forward. He got a clear run on goal. The whistle went. For some unknown reason, there's no excuse. This was a major, major error by the referee. If we go back to our days, and just to explain law, in our days, when we applied an advantage, we weren't able to go back. The advantage was played. That negated. We could go back and caution, but it negated the ability to then stop the game and say no advantage is accrued and come back. So Simon Hooper had this opportunity. He played a very good advantage. He then, if it didn't materialise within 3 or 4 seconds, he's got the ability to go back. He didn't. It was an absolute howler of a mistake when the score was 3-3 and at home to Manchester City. So why? I've tried to look for excuses, and not excuses, but reasons.
Yeah, and because I was as well. So I put my psychologist hat on and I'm trying to dig into his brain and see what was he thinking, because it was highlighted on the sports programs, and they put a circle around Simon Hooper, the referee, that he did put the whistle to his mouth, then took it away, and then put it up again. So why did he do that? The only reason that I could see, that I've been explaining to people, is that perhaps he thought that Jack Grealish was maybe offside.
Yes.
And that if the flag went up to be flagged offside, then he couldn't go back and give the free kick.
There was no flag.
No. Well, you know the way they delayed the flag.
I know. Yeah.
Half an hour after.
So I did the same. As referees, one of the major learning points is to look at these situations and examine what has taken place. So for me, I looked at that offside and I thought initially, that's what's caused him to pull it back, and there was a signal.
I thought Grealish was offside.
But then
as well.
there wasn't. And of course, he wasn't offside.
No.
The second point that often is, we talk about in refereeing holding your gaze. This is when a challenge comes in, the ball breaks loose, and you apply advantage. The important thing for you is to keep an eye on the players that have been involved in that foul challenge from which you've applied an advantage. And I thought, initially, I'm looking was the confrontation between the two players, Haaland and his opponent, but there wasn't. So this sadly was a howler of a decision. And interestingly, when we look at this week's fixtures, which are out, he will, I think, on either Wednesday or Thursday, Hooper will be refereeing Sheffield United versus Liverpool. So his bosses are not, I don't know, not taking it too seriously. But I think, I always looked at the psychological side. I'm not a psychologist, you are. With regard to the impact of a major decision that is wrong, and I put it under the term of baggage. Is Simon Hooper, with all the media coverage, all the number of replays that we've seen on television of this particular incident, which he has no excuse to actually say he's made an error, is he going to carry some baggage into the game Sheffield United versus Liverpool? And I will say one thing about this referee. If he has a strength as a referee, he applies normally a lot of advantages. He's a referee who does like to keep the game flowing. And amazingly, he got this one wrong. And I think that can happen to any referee. But the important thing from refereeing, if it happens to you as an active referee, examine what you've done, analyze it, and then determine how can I avoid that in the future. But it shouldn't be, I'm never going to play an advantage ever again.
See, how will that affect his confidence now?
Yeah.
I think his game is on Wednesday evening. Yeah.
Yes.
How will that affect his confidence, and how will he be psychologically? Because he's going to get stick from the fans. There's no question.
Yes. Yes.
He's going to get stick from either or both sets of fans on Wednesday.
And the players, of course.
Rises, how is that going to affect him?
You know that it can take us years to build a reputation as a referee. And what you're trying to do is build respect between you and the players, you and the managers. The fans can shout what they like to some degree, provided it's not racist. But I think generally he will carry that baggage for a number of years, and it never goes away. I can remember Brian Hill in an FA Cup final at Wembley when he did a very similar thing, and that haunted him even to this day. I can remember years ago sending off Tony Gale for denial of an obvious goal-scoring opportunity. It was the correct decision. I got over it very quickly. But that is still remembered by West Ham United fans. On social media, it's often referred to. You're the guy that created that dismissal and nobody knew anything about it. So I think that he will live with that reputation. Maybe it'll help him sell a book when he retires.
So I mean, to put an argument there from a refereeing point of view, they dropped Darren England from that famous or infamous now Liverpool goal that was disallowed, that should have been allowed. Who was the referee there? John Brooks, was it?
Yeah, I think it might have been, yeah.
Yeah. So if Darren England is stood down, although a goal wasn't scored in this instance, could the same not have been said for Simon Hooper, that he should have been and could have been stood down as well?
Well, this is the difficult element that comes in. The Simon Hooper is an employee of the PGMOL, right?
And isn't Darren England or not?
Yeah. In the case of this incident, we have to go back to law. He's done nothing wrong in law.
Yeah.
So he can argue his case. Why should he be suspended? And I suspect that might have gone through the PGMOL management, determining whether he should have this game or not. And I think they've got a very difficult. If you take a referee off the game, you've got to explain to a board of directors, as I used to have to, why you've actually taken that course of action. So it's not like we're in the park and we're a bunch of amateur referees and we make a mistake. This is at the elite level. They're paid employees, and I have no doubt that Howard Webb and his team will have examined very carefully this particular decision. But as Dermot Gallagher rightly said on Sky today, and I thought he explained it really well. I've been critical of him at times. He made that point. He made that same point that he's not done anything wrong in law.
So, good point. Yeah. Look, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. If they took him off, then it would be said that he made a mistake and he's getting punished. They leave him on, and something happens that he's going out there less than 100% confident. Something else might happen.
I go the other side. I take it that I used to say, look, I'm taking you off this game in your best interest.
Yeah.
I want you to get some operational advice from our coaching team. I'm quite happy to sit opposite and give you the advice. But I think you need to talk it through and examine it, and perhaps tell me how you would handle a similar situation. But there was more to that, wasn't there? Because I think that when you actually look at the behavior of the players after they applied an advantage and then blew up, that's a whole different subject.
Yeah.
And he was surrounded, and in a way, I think that's when the top referees that I've run the line for and people I've been in the company of, they get tough. and I think Simon Hooper should have at least shown at least one yellow and perhaps not 2 or 3 for being surrounded by Manchester City players. And in particular, I think there were grounds for Haaland being dismissed on the grounds of his approach, which I felt was very aggressive. And he was certainly mouthing language which was unacceptable in the way that he was saying it.
Yeah. It's a long time since we had this kind of incident.
Yeah.
Andy Durso was there, and then there was another one here with Craig Pawson. And thankfully those have now, well, hopefully they're going to do something about it. But just to finish off on this, do you think perhaps the reason Simon Hooper didn't give out yellow cards was because he felt he'd made a complete howler and that he'd be punishing players for his mistake?
Yeah, I think that's the human element that comes into play. I think that he'll go away and think about it and probably try and avoid it in the future. I hope that from his own refereeing point of view, it doesn't restrict him from operating his style of applying advantage and be good at it. But on this occasion, it went sour.
And they won the PSG Newcastle, and there have been a couple of penalty, I put inverted commas, incidents since. What is handball? My goodness, nobody seems to know anymore. I think the old way, as you and I remember, was the movement of the hand or arm.
Yes.
I don't know why they call it a handball, because the arm was also, but the hand or arm towards the ball, not the ball towards the hand. And now we have other things like making the body bigger, and oh my word, goodness, it's hard to know what a penalty is and what a penalty is not.
Yeah. Let me just tidy one thing up, which I think is important. Yeah. The IFAB appear to be running now a sister website, and believe it or not, we talk about laws of the game, but it's called footballrules.com. And it highlights.
I haven't heard that one.
Yes. So there's a question in there. I think I've sent you the slide reference, and basically what it shows is that it says very clearly, if the ball hits the body or the foot and strikes the arm, That is not handball. So if the ball, as in this, the PSG and in others that we've seen, it strikes the body and then hits the arm, then in that sense, that's not a free kick or a penalty kick. And someone on social media took me to the site. He said, look at it and you'll get the confirmation of that particular decision. And that's exactly what I did. And I'll try and find it on my phone whilst I'm talking. I ought to have had it perhaps ready. But, you know, we often don't know what we're going to talk about.
But Keith, doesn't the old principle still apply, though? If it hits the body or the foot, and hits the arm, but hitting the arm, yeah, you did send me that. Yeah, I do have. Yeah.
So the question is, a player heads, kicks the ball, and it then hits their own hand or arm, right?
Yeah.
This is not handball unless the ball goes directly into the opponent's goal or the player scores immediately afterwards. In which case, a direct free kick is awarded to the other team. So this is what happens next. This is on the IFAB website. And as a result of that particular decision at PSG, Roberto Rossetti, as I understand, who's the head of refereeing in UEFA, took the VAR off his next game. He was scheduled to have a game, I think, this week or next week, and he took him off the game.
Who's that? Marciniak, now the Polish referee.
Not the referee. He took the VAR off the, which surprised me.
Yeah, because I mean, the VAR is, as it says, is video assistant. Emphasis on the assistant.
Correct.
But the referee still makes the final decision.
Yeah.
So, how does he justify that?
Well, I don't think. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the referee and the VAR should have been taken off the game.
Yeah.
But I think it might be that Bushanek hadn't got another game, but the VAR had. That might be the reason. I don't track UEFA appointments. All I do know is that the sooner the handball law, somebody sits round a table, and they've missed the opportunity, haven't they, this year, and actually looks at it and says, this is putting referees in jail because they are being allowed to interpret it their way. So that must be that the law is too loose and we're applying too many statutes around it in terms of what if. And let's get back the law back to where it used to be. Handball, it has to be deliberate. And then I think that when we look at the movement of hand to ball, and when we actually look at whether the body shape's larger and all that sort of nonsense, bin it, because it's too subjective.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. But just on finally on this handball thing, you say if it strikes the foot or the body and then goes to the arm, but surely the same principle applies. If the arm moves towards the ball, even though it struck the foot or the body first or whatever, still a handball.
Well, if you read it, if the ball comes to the player and it doesn't take his body and he's handled it, that's of course a handball. What we're talking about here is the deflection of the ball off the player body onto his hand and arm.
Yeah, onto his hand or arm. But what happens if he moves his hand or arm forward or down or up? Towards the ball?
I mean, this is where it's ambiguous.
Very.
And you know,
and that's going to cause more problems.
Well, I mean, Well, in the Premier League, I don't think they've been interpreting the law in that way.
Yeah.
That's why I sent it you. I was a bit like, wow, you know, I penned something, and you know, it doesn't matter how long you've refereed in this game, you're always learning. You never stop learning. And I made a comment, right, justifying what I'd said, and up pops this guy who says, Keith, you need to have a look at this, mate. Which I did, and that's what that comes of it.
And this is, did you say this is on the footballrules.com?
Yeah, this is footballrules, one word, .com. And you can talk about stroke offences, sanctions. Yeah.
So we don't have football laws anymore now. We don't have the laws of the game. We have football rules.
This is a sister site. I mean, do you know, I smile because a lot of people who sadly have passed away, you know, the terminology. I once wrote on a report to the FA that I'd booked a player.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, the County FA, Sheffield and Hallamshire County FA, run by a brilliant guy called Ernest Kangley. I got a phone call. I was at work. At lunchtime, Mr. Hackett, could you pop into my office at the Bull and Mouth pub? It was above the pub then. I need to chat to you. And there I am, little boy in front of the boss, in a sense of referee of football. And he goes, since when? And he threw the referee's chart at me and said, right, what I want you to do, Mr. Hackett, is spend the next 3 or 4 days looking for the word booked. And I went, pardon? And then he read my report and he said, there's no booked, it's caution. And I smile. It's very similar. I was once refereeing a game at what is now Sheffield FC's home ground on a Sunday morning. And George McCabe, who was the FIFA referee, and Derek Dooley, who was a hero of mine, was at the game. And I knew they were at the game. And they knocked on my door afterwards and came in and were very complimentary. And George McCabe said to me, I've got a tip for you, Keith. Oh, thank you. What's that? When you're watching the ball in the air and you're watching it like as though you're at a tennis match, I just want to tell you this. The ball never committed an offence. So will you stop looking at the ball and look at the players, and then you'll detect the holding and pulling that I'm not going to tell you about that took place in this game. And those sort of snippets of advice
stick with you.
Stay with
you.
Yeah.
Stick with you. Keith, sin bins. It's raising its ugly head again, if you like to call it that. They want to bring it in now.
Yes. Well, let me tell you, I think, first of all, the sin bins in grassroots football here in England have worked quite well. And I say quite well because I talked to a young referee a few weeks ago and asked him why he hadn't made use of the sin bin. By the way, it's only used for dissent, nothing else.
Dissent, yeah, okay.
Dissent only.
Verbal, obviously, yeah.
So what you've got, I went in and said to him, I can't understand why you didn't make use of the sin bin. And he said to me, well, if I issue too many sin bins or a sin bin, the clubs will mark me down. And I warn referees who listen to this site, never worry about the marks that you achieve from clubs, because
I don't know why clubs are allowed to do that anyway.
Yeah, the governing body don't take that much notice of them. So we have in various leagues up and down England the use of the sin bin, and this little card, there was issued to referees, and you may be surprised that if you have, for example, a non-dissent yellow card, right? That's the first yellow. And then afterwards, later in the game, the referee, the player shows dissent. In that situation, the only punishment he gets is another yellow card, and he goes to the sin bin. So he's got 2 yellow cards. He's then allowed back on the field, and of course he could get a third yellow and a red. Now here's and this is why the complication of it. If he gets a dissent, he's sin bin, yellow card, sin bin, and then he dissents again, right? He then gets a sin bin, right? And this time he's not allowed. He gets a red card. I'm just reading it, but he can be substituted.
He can.
Yes. So if you get 2 sin bins in a game, you don't take part in the game, but you can be substituted.
Oh, that's making a mockery.
So what I will do, if I haven't already sent you a photograph, maybe it's one for you.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, please.
Yeah, I'll send you that, and then you can put it on your social media page, and the readers can pick up on it. But this is how it's operated in England.
So you could get 3 yellow cards in a match and still be substituted.
Yeah. But
So
no. You can get 3 yellow cards. At that point, you're off. You can get 2 yellows for dissent. You're off, but you can be substituted.
You know, young referees coming along, Keith, and even the older guys, they're going to find that very difficult to comprehend, you know?
Yeah. I mean, when this was first introduced, I went to listen to the FA's. Mark Ives was the guy then. He was employed at the FA. Very articulate guy. Terrific administrator. I don't know why the FA let him go, but they did. And he had to explain this, and he went through a presentation. It was as good a presentation I've ever heard. It was very, very precise, very clear, and the reasoning behind this process. So it's a deterrent. But now what is happening is, of course, I think that with the IFAB, they're talking about bringing in the sin bin. But of course, like everything, they'll run an experiment somewhere, and they'll probably overcomplicate it. They're already talking about foul challenges coming under the dissent, coming under the sin bin scenario. I worry about the thinking. You know, what we're trying to do here is the governing body are trying to chase weak officiating, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I think what they've got to do is they've got to get back to, we want stronger, more efficient officiating on the field of play. And that way, I think referees will gain respect.
2 quick points, Keith. Lots of new refs. You sent me the referee appointments, match appointments. Thank you very much, and always appreciated. A lot of new names on the list this week.
Yes. Well, Simon Borrett, I think this might be his 6th game of the season, and he's had a very, very good start. Came out of nowhere. I mean, obviously a Football League Championship referee. He wasn't standout. I watched him on his first game in the Premier League, and I suddenly sat on the edge of my seat thinking, this was a very efficient performance of the likes that I used to see week in, week out, when I was boss of the PGMOL. And I sort of made comment on social media. I said, I'm really impressed with this young man. I hope that he gets another game. And in fairness to Howard Webb, he's been giving him regular appointments. So that's really good.
Yeah. And you send me a note about a referee in the Netherlands. Was it Holland that claimed he didn't use his whistle once in the first half, other than to finish the first half?
Other than to start the game. I mean, it's a you know, I was asked if it was a world record, and I just went back and said, well, as far as I'm concerned, it has to be.
I've never heard of it.
It's amazing. But, you know, hey, the two teams must have been just getting on with the game.
Yeah.
There couldn't have been many free cakes. You know, we often talk about the restarts. It says a signal, doesn't necessarily say a whistle.
That's right.
That confuses a lot of players, doesn't it? He didn't whistle to start the game. Well, you don't have to. It's a signal. So,
but he mustn't even have had any free kicks in the first half.
Well, I assume that's the case.
Or lots of advantages.
Yeah. Well, I might well have been, but it's a remarkable feat for, and you know, it's credit to the players, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I mean, ultimately, it's ideal, and I'm pleased it's been broadcast in terms of the public knowledge being aware of this particular occurrence in Holland. You know, I've been to Holland a few times, and they are quite deep thinking about the game. Their structure of coaching and mentoring and management of referees is really, really impressive. And you know, I do think they've had some really good people involved. I know for a number of years there was a Dutch referee in charge of the assessors at UEFA, and he worked extremely hard, getting continuity in terms of how assessors marked and how they brief referees.
Yeah. As always, Keith, thank you very much for your comments and your insight, and for explaining things. And we'll do it all again next Monday, please God. And thank you out there for watching and your comments. Keep them coming in. And we'll see you again next Monday, same time, same place at 8 o'clock. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you.